passes that one every time.
Yep, every time.
So, question 9 on chapter 9 in the Equip. What are the historical tests that scholars often use to determine whether or not a historical document is authentic? Not just the Bible, but any ancient document. Yes.
We have early testimony.
We have early testimony. In other words, was it written closely to the time that it happened? Or was it written generations and generations later? So do we have early testimony? Do we have early writings about the events? Do we have that for the Bible? For the New Testament?
Yes.
Yes, we absolutely do. What's number 2, or what's another one?
Do we have eyewitness testimony?
Do we have eyewitness testimony? Do we have testimony from those who saw it, who lived it at the time? And for the New Testament, we have John, for the Gospel of John, and 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. We have all of Paul's letters. We have Peter's letters. We have James' letter. We have the Gospel of Mark, which was informed by Peter. So we have all kinds of eyewitness testimony. What's another one? Yes.
We have testimony from multiple.
Yes. Do we have testimony from multiple independent eyewitness sources? Okay, so why is multiple important? Yes.
It's way harder to make something up because multiple people are trying to keep your stuff straight, and usually multiple people seeing something.
Yeah, and so if you have multiple people that are eyewitnesses and they tell the story, and they all tell the same story, then you can be fairly sure that it's true, right? I had a friend at Millard North who once had 4 boys walk in late to her first hour class. And they said, "We're sorry, we had a flat tire." And she said, "That's fine, no problem. But I did give a pop quiz today, so I need you to sit down and take. There's one question. Which time?" She knew those boys, and she knew that they hadn't had a flat tire. Were they going to all give the same answer?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Front left. Every time.
That's funny. I was also thinking front left, so I made it.
They
Should
did
get a
not.
fake flat
They
tire.
did not. They did not.
Wait, hold up.
So when you have, it's called corroborating evidence that agrees with other evidence, it makes it more certain. Do we have multiple independent, written by different people, eyewitness sources? Yeah, we do. It means they didn't crib off each other, right? They didn't just write what everybody else wrote, because they're independent and they don't tell the same. They don't. And it's not, they tell the same story, but they don't have the same exact same right in their writing isn't exactly the same. Diego, could you please close it? What is the 4th one? Yes.
Are the eyewitnesses trustworthy?
Yes. I'm a teacher. I love all of my students. I know the ones I can trust. I know the ones that are trustworthy, that are literally worthy of my trust. We do have eyewitnesses that were trustworthy because they had nothing to gain and everything to lose in writing. And that alone would show that they were trustworthy. Why would you tell a false story that gets you in
Maybe we're gonna come from a story that's way worse.
True.
trouble? No.
You're late for a flat tire. You were late for being told don't work.
No.
You're actually like
No,
someone
but that, I know what you're saying, but you're still, but you're still lying. But there's in their case, they weren't doing that.
Yeah,
That's
because they weren't like going in.
they had nothing to gain and literally everything to lose.
So, and what's worse than being called Hitler?
What?
What's worse than being called Hitler?
Right,
I mean, like, it's
right.
kind of hard to come up with something.
Right, yeah.
As a family.
I think it'd be better to be called Hitler, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and if you're expecting a fisherman to do mental gymnastics like that, I don't, and they don't even understand mental gymnastics. Before that was
Gymnastics.
Yeah, philosophers.
Jesus hadn't invented
Didn't
like
come close to that, and they didn't even do stuff like that. They weren't
They
that
weren't good
smart.
either. They weren't. Well, they kind of were.
They weren't a bunch of
Yeah.
years back then.
We were manly.
What's the next one?
We have corroborating evidence from archaeology or other.
Yeah. So if you're going to have an ancient history, there needs to be that you can't just take it on face value. There needs to be corroborating evidence, either through archaeology or other writers that tell the same story. Independent writers, yeah.
I feel like if Jesus had, instead of being like good, was evil, we'd have a lot more people who agreed that he had existed. You know, there would be a lot less speculation over whether he was real or if he had been on the opposite end.
Yes, but there's really no doubt that he was.
Well, of course.
Because of this. So I'm trying to remember his name. Gallio? No. And in Acts, Luke says that he was the proconsul of a city. I can't remember the city now, too. Proconsul in I don't know. But in Acts, he talks about this Gallio who was proconsul, and for a long time, people said there was no such person. He never existed. Luke made it up. And then they uncovered a road. I don't know. Anyway, they uncovered this road, and that was, made of these bricks, and on one of those bricks was etched. It was a thank you to Gallio, who was the proconsul there at that time, and so that archaeology corroborated Luke's story, right? When I was, this is Old Testament, but when I was in college, I was taught that the walls of Jericho fell long before the Israelites showed up. And years later, I think it was when I was teaching in Colorado, so not a lot of years later, I was on an airplane, maybe flying home, and I picked up this magazine. This magazine was just an airplane magazine. And I saw that there was an article on Jericho. And turns out that, and this was not a Christian magazine, turns out that they were looking in the wrong place. They were, how there were tells, right? And they were looking in the wrong tell, the wrong part of the tell. And this non-Christian article, this is a quote from, that the walls of Jericho fell in an instant at about the time that it was written. Exactly the time. So we have archaeological corroboration for that. Do we have corroborating evidence in archaeology or with other writers? And obviously we do from New Testament. And then what's the next one?
On number 7. Wait, you just talking about that?
No. Corroborating evidence from archaeology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Enemy attestation.
Yes. Do we have any enemy attestation when two people who our enemies say the same thing. They're probably telling the truth because neither one likes the other. Neither one wants to help out the other. And
So it
so
means
we
that they-
do have enemy attestation, right? From and I don't know that I called Josephus an enemy, but he certainly wasn't a believer. And he told the same story. Yes.
It's like they wouldn't have agreed if the other side was making up anything they gain.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
Back to the flat tire story. It's like if Seamus had a flat tire, and I was like, "Yeah, I saw Seamus on the side of the road. He had a flat tire." Because I hate Seamus.
But
Wait to the second part.
Had to kind of think
Booyah!
that one through a little bit. Yeah.
And on to number 7, embarrassing
Feels what
events,
you're
because I laughed at him as I drove by.
And then what's the last one? What's the last one? Yes.
Does the testimony include embarrassing events or details?
Yeah. You only tell an embarrassing story if it's true. You don't tell it if it's not. And certainly in this case, it wasn't just an embarrassing case. That's the last time. So no. So after we're done. For example, it was sheer. If it's not true, it was sheer idiocy for the gospel writers to say that the women were the first to see Jesus alive, the first eyewitnesses of the resurrection, because they weren't even legally able to testify in court. And it says even in one of the gospel accounts that when they told the disciples, they didn't believe them because they thought they were old wives' tales because they were women. The only reason you put women at the tomb first is if women were at the tomb first. The only reason that in the book that you informed, you tell everyone that Jesus called you Satan is if Jesus called you Satan. We have all over the place. There's embarrassing details details that are embarrassing to the author. Okay, let me see what we're doing. Okay, so let's go on to the engage questions.
Oh, wait.
Well, you're doing them now.
Okay.
How would you refute the objection that the New Testament isn't reliable because history can't be known? Yes.
Then how do you know what you believe? Because if they're an atheist and they believe that there is no God, but they can't know that there isn't a God, if they claim that history can't be known.
Nothing can be known. We all know stuff. Yes.
I mean, you're saying history can't be known. There's so many things that you have to specify. I guess what constitutes history. Past. Like what happens with your history? What are they gonna know? You doesn't exist for all they know. I mean, and then like you got the idea of like where is cut off? What is stuff from history? You know, we're pretty sure World War II happened, but that is their history, so who knows? You know.
Right. It flies in the face. It flies in the face.
I want to say one thing. Yesterday was Do we not know anything about yesterday?
Right.
Or what happened?
Right. Exactly.
John knows.
I was going to say, history class was really good.
Yeah, you'd probably like that, right? No more history
Yeah.
class.
Yeah.
You can't know anything.
Wait,
Yes,
what?
we can't know history. I'm really good at that. I have enough days. I have enough days.
Honestly, I still don't know anything in history class.
Okay, now let's put on our thinking caps and think about the roadrunner tactic. Is that what you're going to do?
Not quite. I was going to ask. Okay. I was going to ask them. So how did you get here this morning? that history. How do you know that you drove here from your house? How do you know you have a house? That's technically historical.
Right. Does anybody see how this is self-defeating though? Yeah.
Basically everything that they, especially evolutionists, they if they can trust that something they believe happened, right? If they can trust that happened without eyewitness testimony, without anyone actually being there, if they say, well, it's reasonable to assume that this happened and agree with all their hearts, then they can't say that about Christianity. And in fact, even less so, because Christianity, like Jesus had eyewitness testimony. So people were actually there. So your argument is completely discredited if you say that. Your argument for evolution and your argument against Christianity.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's like the literal tactic is just saying like something. It's saying that something that can't be known, you know, and you're claiming you're making a claim that you know something, but that you know can't be known.
Right. So yeah. So in order to say that, they must know something about history.
Right.
Namely, that history can't be known. But that's knowing something about history, isn't it? So it is self-defeating. And actually, I had the idea of the spontaneous generation as well. The origin of the first life can't be known either, but they say.
Honestly, claiming that evidence should have 100% concrete reliability is kind of foolishness because it's so hard to satisfy that need to know absolutely everything about everything because we're so limited as
Right.
humans, and being a reasonable human is understanding that weakness. I mean, that's all. Ask a philosopher that, and you can't know everything.
Right.
And so what we have to do is rely on reasonable assumptions based on logical evidence.
Right.
Which is what every scientist does. So to say this just goes against everything you assume.
Absolutely. So how would you respond to the objection that the New Testament isn't reliable because the New Testament documents contain miracles? So, well, that's chapter 8. We've talked about it. Since God exists, miracles should be not accepted, should be expected. Yeah, that miracles can happen, and in fact have happened. Yes.
I was just gonna say that not only, if you're saying that only the New Testament is accurate, the Old Testament predicted miracles. In the Old Testament, so if you're saying that the New Testament isn't real, then the Old Testament can't.
But the fact that there are so many prophecies concerning Messiah in the Old Testament, including that he would be a miracle, that lends to good evidence. Yes.
Without the presupposition, which it's a logical presupposition that God does exist, and so therefore miracles are possible. Without that presupposition, I think it would still make sense for the New Testament to be reliable even with miracles, because it's the same logic as any other historical event being proven. I mean, they went to the walls of Jericho and they said, well, so we have archaeological evidence for some of these miracles, and so. Just because the miracles are there doesn't mean that all the evidence is proven. Actually, the evidence is like for the miracles, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the miracles were from eyewitness testimony, and so just like we can attest to someone's existence through eyewitness testimony, we can also attest to the miracles' existence through eyewitness testimony. And so backwards, now that there are actually miracles, then we can assume, okay, there's something supernatural must have happened. So, like, even without the presupposition of God, just simply looking at the same way that we attest to a person's existence, so we can attest to a miracle's existence.
That's good. How would you refute the objection that the New Testament isn't reliable because the New Testament writers were biased? They were believers. Yes.
So is the person making that claim. So is everyone in this room. So is everyone on this earth. Everyone has their own biases, but that doesn't prevent us from.
Yes.
But they're saying evolution isn't true because it's rare. want like something that says that if someone's writing about something, they probably believe it. They're saying this is true.
Right.
They probably believe it. You know, if the Jewish historian dude said that like Jesus was the Messiah and Jesus could do all this stuff, they would have just discredited it too.
Yeah, whatever, the thing that makes something true is not the bias, lack of bias, or the bias of the author. It's evidence,
Not
right? It's
affected
evidence.
by the
Yeah.
positive
It's
perspective.
just like you said, like it doesn't. They didn't have anything to gain from it. They are so happy. We know it's not biased because we have and also like another aspect of it is like all of like history. It's like it's hard to say it's biased.
And the winners had nothing to lose, right? But the disciples. Here's what I wrote down for that. It might have made them more likely to be accurate because they had such, they had such buy-in, and they were believers, and so they knew that they needed to be as accurate as possible. But then the other thing is, another way of asking this question is you can't believe the New Testament because it was written by the converted, by those who were Christians. Well, what caused them to be converted in the first place? Right? There must have been something because they were hiding. Something big must have happened for them to become willing to die for what they were saying.
Because the only way that bias really affects writing is it gives the writer a motivation to lie or to ignore truth. The problem with that is they have so many reasons to say other than what they said. What they said is embarrassing. What they said was dangerous. What they said was huge. What they said was like extremely new for the time. It was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
So they have more motivation to write the opposite of what they wrote. So here it's it's obvious that their bias didn't affect their writing. In fact, I think I kind of agree where it actually probably pushed them to push more towards the truth because whatever motivated them to write that must have been powerful.
And all they had to do was save their skin. Nobody did. And why, this is the last thing I wrote was, why would they make up the resurrection? It only brought them problems. Anyway, last question before we're done for today. Yes?
Even if they had said that they made it up, if like one person cracked, it wouldn't matter. If someone says 2 + 2 is actually equal to 5, that doesn't change that it actually equals 4. That's again said otherwise.
Truth's not affected.
I've read that somewhere. How would you refute the objection that the New Testament isn't reliable because converted people are not objective? Yes.
They didn't believe what they didn't believe it, they wouldn't write. Right? The bias, should make them look better, but they're actively writing about their flaws. The bias should be them trying to like make it better, look better, look less broken. They probably wouldn't have written about how Jesus was like talking to all these prostitutes and sinners and everyone who no one has any respect for, right? And why would they write that? How much they were writing, but if they had a bias, they would ignore that.
Yes.
Oh. It looked like you were falling on me, like, I lost my train of thought. It's kind of like what we were going off of.
Often. Yes.
Mine is just getting very simple. One word, genealogies. It seems like from the very beginning their goal is community, so.
That's not. Interesting is one way of. You can't argue it. Yes.
I remember, kind of like what we were talking about, just last question, because everyone's going to be biased about what they write about because they believe it's true. Everyone does that. You can't say something is false because someone believes it.
Yes. You can be both invested emotionally and unbiased at the same time, right? I adore my children, absolutely. Now, I'm a little more biased. That just happens. But I know them well. I know their flaws. I know their, and the same with me. I'm both invested in them, but I also, I'm not one of those moms like, he can't do me wrong. He wouldn't do that. Yes, he would. Cheat on a test? Absolutely. So I'm a realist, right? Even though I'm very invested in that, I believe I'm unbiased. So you can be both invested and emotionally unbiased. And most writers believe in what they're writing, or they wouldn't write it, right? So then we can't believe anything anyone says. And then passion may cause a writer to be more careful, to be more accurate, because they want people to know the truth. And remember, these people weren't doing this to, make friends and gain fame. This wasn't helpful to them. And then, ironically, the critics claiming this are themselves biased. So then we should pay attention to what they say about it because they are themselves. So a little bit of a road rare tactic there as well. Okay, we'll stop there. Took up most of the hour. Sorry about that. But I will give you tomorrow to work on your on the letter.
What do you have to offer on Mondays?